Hey everyone, welcome to another lecture. Do you ever wonder where our political parties come from? Oh, you do? Then boy do I have the treat for you. Today we are talking about Brutus and the Federalist Papers. These are deep cuts and foundational documents, the B-sides, the rare alternative tracks you share with only those you care about. Only true fans of America's government know about these ones. And anyone who has to take an AP Gov test. The AP Gov test has a few foundational documents they want you to know. Declaration of Independence, Articles of Confederation, the Constitution, and Brutus I and the Federalist Papers. Now make no mistake, the documents we're talking about are from 1781. They are arguments against and in support of our Constitution, but you hear the same arguments made about our government today. Plus, I'd also argue that the political parties we have today started with the creation of the Constitution. So, let's get into it. As the Constitution was being created, many framers split into two groups, and these groups centered around the concept of federalism. Federalism is the separation of powers on a national, state, and local scale. But the federal, aka national government, reigns supreme. Meaning if there was ever a dispute in law, say the legalization of cannabis, while your state might legalize cannabis, you can still be tried under federal law. Unlike confederalism, aka the Articles of Confederation, and later the Confederate States, which believe that states should have more power than the national government. There's the difference for you. So we have one group, the Federalists, who believe in a strong central national government and supported the Constitution. This group included Hamilton, John Jay, and James Madison, to name a few. Then you had the Anti-Federalists, who believed states should have central power, and they feared a strong central government was just another term for a monarchy. Among the Anti-Federalists were Thomas Jefferson, Patrick Henry, and Roger Yates. Now, New York was a battleground state. It wasn't clear if they would ratify the Constitution or not. They were on the fence. We all have that one wild card friend who keeps us on our toes. Will they show up to the party or will they leave you hanging? That was New York. So what one of those anti-federalists did was leak the information coming from the Constitution Convention and wrote an article warning New York to not ratify the Constitution. The essay was Brutus I. Once again, Brutus I was the anti-federalist argument against the Constitution. No one knows who wrote it, but many believe it was Roger Yates. I'd show you a picture of him, but chances are he's exactly whatever you imagine right now. It's called Brutus I because the Federalists felt it betrayed the trust of those at the convention and ruined chances of getting it ratified.
Et tu, Brute!
But Brutus I had good reasons to not ratify the Constitution, and these were the primary arguments. Number one, states should reign supreme because a state government can respond quicker to a community's needs than the federal government. Number two, the necessary and proper clause, the supremacy clause, and the judiciary gave government too much power. Anti-federalists were upset that judges were not voted for but appointed into the position, and they served lifetime terms. And now we come to the necessary and proper clause. Article 1 of the Constitution is for Congress, where they list very specific things Congress can do. But at the very end, they say, oh yeah, Congress can make all laws necessary and proper to carry out the rest of their powers. We call this the elastic clause because it gives Congress implied powers and has allowed them to stretch their power and make more laws such as the Affordable Care Act, Social Security, and a national bank, to name a few. It's elastic. The Supremacy Clause also states that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and if there's ever any conflicting state laws with the federal government reigns supreme. These three pieces angered anti-federalists because they feared it made government too intrusive, too powerful, and a loophole for another tyrant. Finally, anti-federalists made the argument, and this is a quote from Brutus I, "A free republic cannot succeed over a country of such immense extent, containing such a number of inhabitants, and these increasing in such a rapid progression as that of the whole United States." What that means is, the United States is too diverse, too big, and evolves too quickly for a massive federal government to keep up. This was 250 years ago, before the US became what it is today. So that was the Anti-Federalist case. They wrote one article, published it for New York. Now, what did Alexander Hamilton and other Federalists do? They wrote 85 articles. John Jay wrote 5, Madison 28, and Hamilton wrote 52. Each details every decision made within the Constitution and why it's the most logical to preserve a republic. By the way, Hamilton, Madison, John Adams, a lot of our founders were quite short individuals, so I can only imagine the power complexes they had. I can only imagine. While you don't have to know every article from the Federalist Papers, there are 4 you should understand, so let me explain them to you. Federalist number 10 by Hamilton makes the case for a representative democracy, aka a republic. He explains how people naturally create factions. Once again, a faction is just a smaller group with certain values within a bigger group. You can't stop people from making factions. But, he explains, factions want what's best for only themselves and can often fight over what's right. Federalist number 10 says a republic form of government best represents a majority and minority voice because it requires them to make compromises and work together. For example, if we had a direct democracy, groups would constantly be fighting for power and their own self-interests. But with a republic, whoever represents a city must hold many different factions and voices and somehow come to a compromise for all of them to live. Federalist 51. This is the article we quoted in class regarding men and angels. Madison was making the argument for 3 branches of government that not only check people, but are able to check themselves. He's explaining this is a strong way to prevent tyranny because you need not only votes, but then the rest of Congress and courts to side with you. No one group can get their way. So while we currently have a Republican president and a Republican majority Senate and Congress, they need the Democratic House of Representatives right now to get any law passed. Checks and balances. Federalist 70, and this was another controversial part. How do we give power to one ruler without calling it a monarchy? We need one person to make quick decisions in times of war, tragedy, and disease. We need someone to speak to international governments and a united America. Hamilton was arguing this is why we need an executive, a president. Without one, there's no clear communication or quick decisive choices or clear union of folks. Finally, Federalist 78. Many anti-federalists had problems with federal judges appointed and not voted for, but also that federal judges serve lifetime terms, meaning when a judge is appointed, they can be there till either they retire or die. The reasoning behind this, Hamilton argues, is we need a court system that isn't influenced from constant changes within the other branches. We need stability in our law system, and if we left that to a vote, people might choose someone charming on a late night show instead of a person knowledgeable of law. We need a court system that is well knowledgeable about the Constitution and to keep Congress and the President in check. And just this past summer, you've seen that in the Supreme Court upholding DACA or putting a federal ban on the discrimination of LGBTQ+ employees. Now, the main criticism against Federalist arguments was the very thing they were creating, a two-party system, a government influenced more by one political party over another versus multiple voices. While we have a republic, we also have 2 primary political parties now, and a simple majority of 51% of people can overcome the other 49%. Just 10 years later, after the ratification of the Constitution, in Washington's farewell address, he warned about the dangers of political parties. But because we argued about the creation of our government system, that fight didn't go away. In fact, it's stronger than ever. The arguments made by Federalists and Anti-Federalists can be seen by Democrats and Republicans. Republicans critique that the federal government is too big, that the people in it could be too wealthy or run by elites. Democrats argue we need more protection from the federal government and often use the necessary and proper clause to do so. While our culture, technology, and altogether society have changed, that core argument remains in our political parties today. Who should govern and what should be governed? We are part of a fight 250 years old, And in order to get the Constitution ratified, Federalists were going to have to compromise with anti-Federalist beliefs in our first 10 amendments and to shape what states' rights look like. Thank you for watching. Godspeed.